Hi, I'm Rachel, and this is my AM reading video for Friday, May 14th, 2021. Again, if I'm being generous with myself. I thought I'd start with an update on this book. These are the complete stories of Dorothy Parker, which I'm ostensibly reading this month for American Jewish Heritage Month slash National Short Story Month. That being said, I've read a total now of 2 stories in this. I'm doing this on purpose because it's pretty low on a priority list of reading for me this month. So I'm perfectly okay with that, and I'll hopefully be finishing this in June. But so far, going with story number 2, I'm still liking this. It's intriguing. This second story was written in 1923. It was called Too Bad. And it's about a divorce. It starts, it's bookended by these 2 women who are, of course, identified by their Mrs., husband's name, talking about the Weldons, Grace and Ernest, who got divorced, and just how shocking they find it because the 2 of them seem perfect for each other, like completely cordial in company. And then in the middle, there's a scene of these 2 people when they're still married after 7 years. Just, a random night when Ernest gets home and Grace is waiting for him. And you realize that that sense of shallow cordiality is all that's between them. That neither of them can be, amped up to even give, like, a description of their days, and that they're both incredibly frustrated by minute details about the other ones, that there's no like emotional connection at all between these 2 people. They're not even aware that both of them hate the apartment they're living in. So I thought that was interesting, an interesting psychological look, because, the 2 gossiping women are like, well, was something like, did something tragic happen? Was there an affair or something like that? Or how could it be? Because, they seem so nice together, but, you get through this interaction between the 2 of them on their own that, a cordial politeness isn't enough for a real relationship. So, yeah, I liked it. Next, I finished The Orchard by David Hopen. This is the fiction book I'm reading for Maybe Midrash, which is a readathon which challenges people to read a serious work of fiction and a serious work of nonfiction having to do with religion. This is a book that is pretty much the retelling of the Pardes story from the Talmud, taking place in this instance in a modern Orthodox high school community in modern day, where 4, rambunctious young teenage boys following in the footsteps of 4 rabbis of old dabble in mysticism and drug use and violence, things like that, to try and commune with God, and there are disastrous consequences. It's also just a sprawling book about the main character, Ari Eden, going through a bit of a culture shock in a way. It's a little too simplistic, but he grew up in a Haredi ultra-Orthodox environment, and then his father got a new job in Florida. He moved from Brooklyn, and Ari was suddenly thrust into a modern Orthodox community, which in the beginning, or even beyond the beginning, seemed like it would be a good fit for him because his mother was, she's a balas teshuva, which means that she didn't grow up Haredi, but she decided to become it later in life. But she also took her son out of the community to learn more about secular studies and, literature especially, because in the Haredi community they're very insular and don't often learn about that. So Ari grew up feeling distant from his community and felt a lot of kinship with secular literature and philosophy and so forth. And in this modern Orthodox setting, he's able to explore that a bit more in an academic setting. And I suppose that's the stuff I'll probably take out of this when reviewing this book alongside my nonfiction book for Maybe Midrash, the idea of how modern Orthodoxy sets itself up in an academic way, because he does have classes with the main rabbi at his school and also with his fellow group of friends. It's actually the rabbi's way of trying to keep them out of trouble, because on their own they're really into, the sex and the drugs and the crazy antics, and he's trying to keep them more on the straight and narrow and challenge their minds, because most of them are just, highly intelligent students who are kind of bored by constraints, I guess. I found it to be a compelling novel about trying to find yourself intellectually and spiritually, though the characters can be certainly insufferable, and I think that Hopen got a bit indulgent with his asides about, look how well versed I am in philosophy and in literature. And there's also a bunch of Jewish textual references in here, so this could be a little more of a remote read for some people, but given my own personal interests, it was more of a fit for me, though I don't think it was a perfect book. I do think that Hopen dropped the ball a bit on his female characters, and there was also just some setup stuff about Ari's transformation from, a class transformation from someone who was relatively poor to someone who seemed to have a lot more money that I just thought weren't handled all that gracefully. It was kind of confusing, although then again, I guess Ari is in his own head and not thinking too much about that stuff. But anyway, overall, I did really enjoy this. I've been looking forward to reading it ever since I got it, in December, so glad to finally check it off the list. The next book I listened to on audio, it's the second in the Expanse series called Calibans War, if you can see that, by James S.A. Corey. To try and summarize here, this series takes place in the 24th century. Humans have started to colonize the galaxy, thanks in part to what's called the Epstein Drive, which allows for fast travel into the outer planets even. This is otherwise relatively physically sound in terms of, I think, how the science works in this book, in these books. There's no hyperdrives or anything like that, and in fact, space is usually very dangerous for people because, we don't have these magical systems of moving at light speed and all that. But anyway, the political system is that Earth is up to 30 billion people, controlled now by the UN. Mars is a breakaway colony, a very sort of military breakaway colony, also with like a dream of, terraforming the surface of Mars. Otherwise, at the moment, they, live in caves. And the belt is where Earth and Mars send people to mine resources for them. But belters themselves, the people who grow up in zero G, have become physiologically a little bit different, and also politically they're their own class and sort of an underclass because they've largely been exploited by Earth and Mars. And into this mess comes an alien force called the protomolecule, which is discovered on one of Saturn's moons, and sadly humans, as they do, start to get ideas of paranoia, fear of genocide from an alien force, and decide the best way to handle that is to make weapons and to even use their own people as guinea pigs in that capacity. So that's where we come in on the first book, and sort of the good guys are a international, I suppose could be the word of it, ragtag group of people on a ship called the Rocinante, two Earthers, a Martian, and a Belter, who get embroiled in this political mess and get to understand the protomolecule a bit and work basically to save innocent people from the scheming of corporations and sociopathic scientists. And there's a question at the end of, are the protomolecule samples all gone now, or most of them, are they all gone, and are people not going to, be subject to the cruelty of other people trying to make weapons? And the answer in the second book basically is no. And the situation continues to evolve in terms of, people trying to make this into a weapon, and it even affects the station of Ganymede, which is called the breadbasket of the belt because of the conditions the station was built in. It's basically where a lot of the food comes from that feeds the belt. It's a multi-POV story. We're following the captain of the Rocinante, Holden. He's basically our main character. And then we get new POVs. We get a UN Undersecretary, Avasarala, who is hilariously abrasive and trying to do the right thing, though. And then we get Bobby Draper, who is a Martian Marine who is basically caught on the wrong side of history when it comes to testing protomolecule weapons. And then we get Prax, who's a botanist on Ganymede, kind of in the same situation as Bobby, really, because Ganymede comes under attack, but more specifically to him, his daughter, who has an immunodeficiency, is swiped away by her doctor before Ganymede falls apart, and they're trying to find her and figure out what all of this has to do with the protomolecule. So I'm hoping that makes some amount of sense. I think if you're into massive world building and questions having to do with science and space exploration, but also just of human legacy and how we build up our societies. There's just a lot of fascinating grist in here to hold on to. And the characters, well, my snobby side that, reads insular fiction says they could be a little bit deeper, but they're certainly not surface level. And there's a lot of internal stuff to dig into there as well. So I'm in love with this series. I came to it through watching the adaptation first. I think that does color a little bit of my relationship with the series, but I'm just feeling like I have no trouble giving this 5 stars and just finding this my comfy, cozy series of, ticking a lot of my boxes. And Calibans War, which is a title based off of the character from The Tempest, really did it for me. If anything, I'm probably feeling a little less gracious toward this book. This is a short story collection called Cadillac, Oklahoma by Louise Farmer Smith. I chose this book as my page 112 tag pick for May, and I will link to that video down below. This book was published by Upper Hand Press, which was a very small press which sadly since went out of business, but I believe their website is still active, so I'll also link to them down below. I have about 100 pages left to go, a little less, in this collection of kind of interlinked short stories. Well, they all have to do with a community of people in this town of Cadillac, Oklahoma. And several of these stories in here are actually columns that are in the local paper of people writing in basically to give their, dashed off opinions about things. And in fact, that's what my page 112 tag segment came from. It was from one of these columns where a man who has a elevated opinion of his poetry prowess feels like he shouldn't have to compete and try to impress the people in his town for, a prize. So there's that. I kind of like the columns in a way that talks to sort of the shallow, gossipy feel of people trying to interact with their community. Maybe that's a cynical way of putting it. I'm less impressed with the stories outright that are told from various people's perspectives. I feel like Smith doesn't have a sense of insular character at all. There's something about these that feel very surface level, and that there's nothing very deep to impart in the story about humanity. And I have trouble even holding on to the action as it happens sometimes, because it just feels like I'm being gossiped to by underdeveloped characters. Maybe I'm being too harsh on it and it's really not as bad as I'm saying, but maybe it's more of a relational thing in terms of how I feel about these versus the other writing that I've read so far recently. But that's my takeaway so far, but I'll try to give a more general consensus of the entire work when I finish it for next week's video. And I must finish it soon because, as always, I have more books coming up the docket, and I specifically talk in this section about my BookTube Prize reading. So the next book I want to talk about here is Entangled Life: How Fungi Make Our Worlds, Change Our Minds, and Shape Our Futures by Merlin Sheldrake. which is a nonfiction book going into, I guess, the function of fungi. It will be a science-heavy book. And I am reading it for the BookTube Prize quarterfinals, where I am judging nonfiction Group C. And that's all I want to say about this book and this segment, because judges are supposed to keep mum on our reading and our opinions until the round ends. But for more information on the prize and my ballot, I will leave links down below. So that about covers it for me now. This is the first week in a couple of weekends that I'm not going to visit my family, and instead I will be staying here in my condo in the DC area with a goal of doing a significant amount of BookTube Prize reading, because the deadline that our ballot judging is due is coming up faster than I'd like, especially now that we're near the middle of the month here. I also have a Mom and Auntie's book club meeting, which I guess I'll be attending. I told my mom I would, even though I decided early on that I would not be reading the book this month, because I have a lot of BookTube Prize reading on my plate, as already mentioned. But in general, I guess I find that even though we talk a little bit about the book, then we often go into broader themes having to do with current events and that sort of thing. So maybe I can still participate anyway. The bigger issue is, how much time should I take away from my BookTube Prize reading, which is, you know, becoming that blaring siren in my life. Also, I will be back on this channel sometime next week to do an author's answer video, which I do every month, taking from J.D. Archer's playlist of AuthorTube questions, so stay tuned. It's been a difficult week for me in terms of news in the world. I'm hoping to take this time to sort of rest and recuperate my mind, while also, you know, I've already talked about the BookTube Prize reading a million times, but, you know, those are the two birds with one stone, I guess. I hope that you all will also have restful weekends wherever you are. Thanks so much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next time.